All right. Mark Wright, welcome to the Bucket List Life podcast, mate.
How are you, mate? Thank you so much for having me on.
No, thank you. You're a very, very busy dude. What's the time over there in the UK?
It's just gone 10 a.m. in the morning, so I've actually been up quite early this morning doing stock market stuff, and then because I knew we've got you today, and then I got my board meeting, and then I've got it's a busy day, short week. We had a bank holiday on Monday. I don't think it was a holiday in Australia. We got a short week, so it's a lot going on. But listen, I love doing stuff back home. As you can probably tell, I'm not a Englishman. I'm an Australian. So this is I think my second ever podcast with an Australian.
But why? How does the question that you get asked? I'm sure all the time, mate, is how does an Aussie end up on the Apprentice for one, the Apprentice UK? And then number two, how the fuck did you win that thing?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Were you just backpacking? You went, oh yeah, look, like most Aussies, backpacking over in the UK, working in a bar, and went, oh, that sounds all right.
Well, I did it as a bit of a joke with a bloke that was working in my office. So I got to the UK. I'd done a year and a half backpacking.
There you go.
Basically, I was a tour guide for Australians that would come over, and I'd take them through Europe to festivals.
So you were the organizer of pub crawls, right?
So I came over, did a tour, and the tour guide he was an animal, and I was like, I want to be that guy. I want to be like, he's living the best life. Like the tour guide was just going around Europe. He would pick up Aussies in Barcelona and take them to festivals. And I was like, I want to do that job. So I went back to Brisbane, packed up all my stuff, moved over to this thing. And I said to my parents, I'll be back in 3 months. It's been 9 years now since I left. Yeah. And then I came over, I was backpacking through Europe, taking all these Aussies through like Oktoberfest, the running of the bulls, doing all of that, just mental stuff. But what I realized pretty quickly is being a tour guide is really good in terms of lifestyle, not so good in terms of the wallet. My money was just running down crazy. My health was running down just as quickly as my money. Yeah. And so I had to go to a country which spoke English to try and get some real money. So I flew to London, and I was living in a backpacking hostel called the White Ferry House, which was it was £9 a night. And I got a job in a call center doing cold calling.
Oh, mate, you've taken some bullets. Wow.
Just the worst job. Yeah. Absolutely the worst job. 500 employees. The phone that auto dials, all of that stuff. Oh. And it was the worst place, but we were selling digital marketing, and the place was making a fortune. They were absolutely making a fortune. So I was watching everything that was going on. And
so what was the core product that you were selling through that?
Google Ads.
Back in the Google Ads days.
And it was when Google Ads just was new. We were telling people, and it was we'd invented the wheel. And so the phone's ringing out. You're making 400 cold calls a day, getting told to piss off, shut up, go kill yourself, all of that stuff. And I'd never done that.
There's pursuit of happiness stuff, don't put it down, or Wolf of Wall Street,
exactly
boiler room stuff.
The headset on, and you would see them marching people out that hadn't hit the call parameters or hadn't hit the sales targets, literally with the box out of the movies. No. And I was I had festival bands on my arm from here to there. I'd been to every festival. I'd done all this stuff. I had 2 pairs of jeans and a Manly Sea Eagles jersey. And I went and bought a button-up shirt from a supermarket because I was so broke. And this company was making a fortune, but because they were so new in the market, they were absolutely shafting the staff. They were shafting their customers. So I put together a business plan for a company that did things much better.
Yeah, right.
And I was I reckon I could start my own business in this market, and do it way better. So I took it to 4 banks in the UK, bearing in mind I'm living in a hostel, looking for a house, whatever. And I tried to get a £25,000 loan to get going, and that no one would even open an account for because I had no residency. I'm an Australian citizen living in the UK. So there was this Kiwi guy that sat on the table next to me. He goes, "Hey, bro, let's try out for The Apprentice this weekend." And I said, "What's The Apprentice?" He said, "It's a TV show where this old man yells at you." And I'd never heard of it. So I was like, I looked it up and stuff. It looked like, I didn't really get the premise. I understood like it was like a business show, but I'd never seen it or anything. So we went down to the tryouts on Saturday, and there were 75,000 people at the tryouts.
You kidding?
And it was just like, I'm from a town in New South Wales that's got like 19,000 people. There were 75,000 people at the tryouts of the show, and it was just crazy. Like, you went into an 11-story building, they put 75,000 people in the bottom, and they eliminated 50% of the people at each level until at midnight that night. I went in at 8 in the morning with 70,000 people, and at midnight that night I was one of 2 left.
You're kidding?
Yeah, it was mate. It was unbelievable. It was so ruthless.
What was the selection criteria? What did you have to do, like, to get through how'd they weed everyone out?
The first thing is they got in lines of 100 people, and they stood you on a stage, and you had 45 seconds to do a public talk, but do your life story in 45 seconds, and they would just eliminate people. And I just don't know. I can't even remember what I said. I just got up there and started going ballistic, just started making out like I had the best life and I was doing all of this stuff.
Well, you kind of did, mate, except for the
yeah. And I think, like, and I kept getting through each level, each stage of the tryouts. And then I got from the 75,000 to the final 1,000 to the final 100. Then I got into the final 20 that went on to the show. And then I was the first in the boardroom on week 1 of the show. And then I was the last out on the week 14 as the winner. Anyway, so I Skyped home to my parents, and I've always been known as, I never let the truth get in a good way of a story.
No.
And I said to my parents, "Listen, I'm on this massive TV show in England," and they're like, "Oh yeah."
Was that the first one, or like what series was this? Was this
series 10?
Series 10.
Series 10, which was after 2 years break of the show. So, and what I didn't realise, it was on BBC One. Now, BBC One, for those that are listening from Australia, is like if SBS was good and popular. So it's got no ads. It's the state-led TV channel, but it's also the biggest TV channel in the country. So the average audience size of an episode of The Apprentice was 11 million.
Dude. Wow.
So, which was pretty big. When I went into the house, I had a whopping 83 followers on Twitter. And when I came out, I had 94,000.
That's it. So what do you, I want to go back a little bit, circle back to, what was the, like, do you go into this like competitively, going, I'm going to crush this, or just see how it goes? Is there a game to play in amongst all this?
It's very tough. It's very, so the whole show is designed by like psychologists to understand how much pressure a human being can cope with. So in the tryouts, it was, they would apply mental pressure and fatigue to people. And it was just people would just break under stress. Like it's very interesting. So I'll give you an example of one of the tryouts. They took us to IKEA and they made us set up that flat pack furniture. But under which would break a bloke at the best of times.
There's a weekend going, if you ask me.
Exactly. And they would put really unreasonable conditions on the environment. So they would say, like, they would give you less time to do it than was possible to achieve it. They would take tools out of the toolbox so you have all the things to do it. And what would happen is, because it was an unwinnable situation, people would like lose their shit. They would be unable to, they'd start swearing, they'd start crying, and they would eliminate them from the process. Now, I'm just sort of like, I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky guy, but I'm really good under pressure. Like, I just don't break.
Where do you get that from? You know, where do you get that?
My old man is a tough bastard. Like,
Right.
He's a ruthless guy. He's a really tough guy. And we were raised pretty hardcore. Like, when you do things, you do them to win.
Yeah.
If you can't win, so my dad, since I grew up, my whole life, he used to go jogging every Tuesday, every Thursday, and every Sunday, and he would make us go jogging with him. And before we could keep up jogging, we'd have to ride next to him. And once we could keep up jogging, and he used to say that no matter, even if you can't finish the run, you have to walk always the full circuit. You never cheat the system. You always got to complete the full thing.
Is he like an old school rugby guy or something?
Yeah, like he's a big soccer fan, a big footballer, and he's very old-fashioned. Like, wears the comb in the pocket, like the whole very old school, right?
That is
like
socks.
Pretty tough. The socks pulled up, the whole old-fashioned Australian sort of upbringing.
You got older brothers, sisters, younger?
I'm the oldest. I got 2 younger brothers.
Yeah, right.
And so, like, we used to have athletics carnivals at school, and he used to say that he'd only come and watch us if we'd win. If he came and watched the first race and we didn't win, he'd go back to work and not watch us. So that's the environment that I came from, of like, you do things to the best of your abilities and you do things to win. And so I got into the final of The Apprentice, and we pre-filmed 6 months, and we put I think it was like 12 episodes in the can, and then they filmed it final live, the finals live.
Fair income, really?
So they have a live audience and all of that sort of stuff. So and you're allowed to bring family to the final. So I called back to Australia and said to my mum and dad, "Can you guys come over for the final?" My dad got on the phone and he said, "I'm only coming to England if you win. Like, if I fly over there and you come second."
The pressure.
And I was like, I don't know if I need that.
Can't have the old man walk out on the full audience. I mean, that's...
Anyway, I won. So that was, I was the first Australian winner of the show in its history in any country. So that was cool. It was really big here. We had like 15 million watch the final. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then my life just went to a completely different place. Like, it just went nuts, like, after that.
So what do you, and we all know the Trump was the guy over in, this guy named Donald Trump. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No, I've never heard of him.
Yeah. He's this dude in America. He's got weird hair and fake tan, but he was on the show The Apprentice over there. And you've got Lord Alan Sugar. Is it Sugar or Sugars over there? Now, he's a hard ass too, yeah?
He is a tough guy.
Now, what's he famous for? Just to give it some context. How has he made his money? How rich is he?
Oh, he's one of the richest men in Europe and the United Kingdom. He's probably the most famous. If you get in a taxi in the UK and say, who's the most famous businessman, they'll say Alan Sugar or Richard Branson.
Yeah.
Now, in Australia, before I'd moved here, I'd heard of Richard Branson. I hadn't heard of Alan Sugar, but when you hear, he's everywhere. He got famous for when computers came out in the 80s.
Right.
He was the guy that brought computers to the UK. So he owned a company called Amstrad, and they supplied like the country 70% of the computers here was Amstrad computers.
Wow.
So he made like a few million quid back in the 70s and 80s, and he put all of the money in property in central London. Now he's the second biggest property landlord in England.
Kidding.
He owns more commercial land than the Queen, and he's richer than the Queen. And so he's a big deal here. He's a big deal. He's a sir and he's a lord. And
he's a double. He's a double.
He's a double. He was
How do you
Sir
get a
Alan
sir and a lord? How does that
Well,
work?
so this is pretty remarkable. So he became Sir Alan. The Queen knighted him for services to business, and
Wow.
he became Sir Alan. And then the Prime Minister inducted him into the House of Lords, and he became Lord Sugar for, again, services to commerce and business. So that's a pretty big deal here. It's, so like, and
Wow.
you get told when you like, because the thing he liked about me is I'm not. Like the English people, when we're in the boardroom, were absolutely shitting their undies. Like he's got a serious presence. He comes in, they were literally shaking. And I just thought, this is the bloke, right? I didn't know who Lord Sugar was or any of this stuff. So
Probably
I said to him, in the first break, it was absolutely boiling in the boardroom. I said, mate, can you turn on the air conditioning? It's roasting in here. And he was literally, everyone's like, that is Lord Sugar. Like, you can't say, mate. You can't, it's like a whole, you've got to be a serious situation. And when you start working for him, you get an email which says, you've got to call him Lord Sugar. You can't call him his name. And like, there's all these rules and stuff.
Oh.
So, you know, from a guy from like Australia, this is like a whole different ball game for me. And then I went to meet him after I won the show, and he invited me to his house for a cup of tea, and I went round there, and it was just like Alice in Wonderland.
So you go into, so the deal is when you win, what do you get when you win?
Yeah, so when you win, there's so many things. So the first thing you get is £250,000 for winning. So I don't know what that is in Aussie dollars, maybe 400 grand.
Double.
Yeah, so nearly $500,000 dollars, and then which is pretty cool. And he takes 50% ownership of a business idea that you came up with on the show. So I came up with a digital marketing advertising company. Wow. So we started that and put 50% in. But you also get him as a mentor and as a coach for the life of the business, and also you get the publicity from the show. So you know, I spoke about, you know, the Twitter following went up 100,000. That went up everywhere. So LinkedIn's tens of thousands, Facebook, Instagram, all of that stuff goes ballistic. And that in itself is worth so much, because when I opened my company on the first day, we got 7,000 leads. For like most people, when they open their company, they're like, okay, how do we go and get business? My thing was, shit, we need to take the phone out of the wall, because it was just me and I couldn't answer the amount of calls or emails that were coming in. Like I was setting up the desk, and like I didn't have a car, I didn't have a house, I was still like sort of getting my bearings, and it's just everything was going crazy.
But you knew, mate, you knew from a former life, you knew how to do phone calls fast and quick and on bang, bang, bang. So thank you.
I could sell. Don't worry about that. There's one thing I'm good at, it is selling. And, you know, I was really lucky to get all my experience in my life just came together at one point. I've been so lucky, you know, when you travel the world, you get so much experience of dealing with different people, different backgrounds, dealing with strange environments. I've been in sales my whole life. When I worked, all I'd done in Australia was sales. So I understood what I needed to do, and I just had to put my head down and work hard for a couple of years.
Mate, good on you. It's so cool. So you've got a board meeting today, and is he involved in your current Climb Online? So,
yes,
so
he's 50%.
So you're meeting him today?
Today, yes, yep.
Well, say g'day to me. Say g'day.
Oh, mate, I will do. It's a pretty tough session today. So we go through everything in detail. We spend one day together once a month. Today is my day with him.
Yeah, okay.
So
nervous? Are you nervous?
Not anymore. I used to be for the first maybe 2 years, and then now it's my 6th year. So it's more like I was going to say mates, but it's far from that. It's more like, he's kind of like my granddad in a way. Like he's this old staunch man, and he doesn't say, it's really different dealing with him. So like when you meet a normal person, I say normal person, you say, how are you? They say, I'm well, thank you. How was your weekend? Good, thanks. How was yours? Very simple. You say to him, how are you? He doesn't answer. He just asks, so I'll say, how are you? And he'll say, so what are the numbers? And he doesn't have short, small talk, doesn't make conversation. It's all very strict. It's about the business. And, it's been an amazing learning curve for me.
On that, what have you learnt about yourself around a guy like that and how he operates, both in life and in business?
To be super successful in any area, it's the dedication that you need. If you want to be the top businessman, which he is, the dedication he has and the laser focus on the goal is unbelievable.
Really?
It's incredible. And it's no different if you're an athlete, if you want to be a top chef, if you want to be, you have to have laser beam focus on that goal and just stay there. Like, he's 74 and he starts work at 6:30 in the morning, finishes at 7 at night every day. And he's like semi-retired, and he starts punching out emails. If I send him an email now, he'll reply in 4 or 5 minutes.
You're kidding.
Bang on.
Wow. And it doesn't go through a gatekeeper or anything. You just straight
no gatekeepers, and you get it. So he says to you when you send me an email, it's not to be any longer than 3 bullet points. If you can't say it in 3 bullet points, you don't understand the concept. So you get 3 bullet points and you get a yes or a no or a noted back.
I've heard that in theory that direct people do that, and it's so. Yeah. Let's refresh. As a D-type personality, that speaks to me. That's unreal. So, what does he taught you about life? Like around a business, just bang, 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 on point, no mucking around, no fluff. Direct, straight, all about the numbers. What about life?
So when I first started with him, he gave a lot sort of wider mentoring and a lot wider coaching. And a lot of it was about when you fully have to understand your business. So first of all, go into a business or an area that you fully understand. He said the reason that I won the show is because he could tell I really understood the concept of my business. I understood the industry,
right.
And I was hardworking. And they're the key elements that he looks for in people, is someone that really understands their sector. If you're going to give someone an investment, you want to know they understand what they're bloody doing. Yeah. And that's the first thing he looks for, and a hard work ethic. Those two combined, you're going to have a pretty good run at success.
That's such a big validation, man, isn't it?
Mate, it was amazing. But I was speaking on stage, and Alan Sugar was sat there, and the CEO of Google was sat next to him. And the CEO of Google whispered to Alan Sugar, "If you don't take him, we will."
Wow.
And so Lord Sugar said that's what got him across the line, that the CEO of Google was gone about me and said that I understood Google as good as any of his people. And he was like, so we're going to take him if you don't. So so I owe that bloke $50 when I see. But
that was probably Eric Schmidt, mate. If it was the global guy, Eric Schmidt. But
it was really
that's
cool.
Amazing. That is amazing.
All of his advice comes back to really simple stuff, mate. Yeah. It's all stuff you've heard before about, understanding what you do, being able to describe it in plain terms, not confusing your customer, make the proposition attractive, make it simple to understand, and try and sign up big customers. The key to making big margins and making big sales is having big customers. And it comes back to really simple premises, and to be successful in business, it is pretty simple, but people just keep changing their course too often. They don't stay at one idea long enough.
Blinkers on. Right
Exactly.
So you've been at Climb Online, and I spoke to your staff last week or the week before, I think.
Yeah, great.
It was a privilege, mate, and hopefully they got something out of the discussion. And
amazing.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you've had the blinkers on with Climb Online for how long? 6 years now?
Yeah, just over.
Yeah, cool. And who are your big clients? Who do you go after? What's a typical client for you?
So when I first started, and I think it comes back to the basics of any business, when you first start, you've got to be willing to take any client, because you've got lack of money, you've got probably no or small employment. So you have to take any business to get going. The most important thing when you're starting a business is cash coming into the till. You need revenues coming in to operate. So when I first started, I had like local dentists, carpet shops, builders, or, you know, all of that sort of stuff. Now, if you fast forward to where I am now, we do the marketing for Emirates, do the marketing for TikTok, the social media channel that you would have seen all those videos popping up everywhere on. So, you know, now my customers are world famous, Groupon in 22 countries, Emirates, like I said, you know, we've got a load of big insurance companies in the UK and Europe and America. So we've got big famous clients now, but it wasn't always that way. I've built up a reputation and a brand now, so I attract better clients. One thing that helped me is I got listed on Forbes when I was 27 or 8 for the 30 under 30. And that helped me massively worldwide because I was very well known in the UK for winning the Apprentice. And then I won Entrepreneur of the Year in the UK 2 years after that. And that was a big deal here as well. And then I got listed on Forbes, and that helped in America massively because I wasn't well known there.
So how do you win Entrepreneur of the Year award? Like, who's that through?
So basically they have like a standard here that the business, the entrepreneurial community in the UK is amazing. Like and this is one thing where, because I'd love to move back to Australia, and from next year, I'm hoping to spend half my time in Australia and half my time here from next year.
Yeah.
Because I miss home, and I love Australia is my home and my favorite place in the world.
Yeah.
Now, the area where we need to take Australia forward is when you come over here, if you go to America, to Silicon Valley, you come into London, being an entrepreneur is cool. It is the cool thing here. Like, you know, I'm as cool for doing business as like the soccer players and all of this sort of stuff, which is like amazing. Like when I left Australia, hopefully it's even a bit better from when I left, but it wasn't that cool to be interested in business, you know, and
I don't think it's got the stigma still. I don't think it's got the stigma as it has overseas.
Why is that?
I don't know, but the tall poppy syndrome comes from the UK. So it's, I don't know what it is. You know, when you say startup, when you say entrepreneur, it doesn't have the same resonance as it does as overseas. Maybe it's been overdone. I don't know.
Amazing. Because like The Apprentice, the TV show, failed in Australia after one series. Dragon's Den, Shark Tank failed after one series. There's all of this stuff that they're trying to get going in Australia. And people don't want to see, I don't know if it's see other people succeed or make money or whatever, but I'd love to come back and really push for a massive amount of change. Starting a business is bloody tough. It's really hard. And we need to support people to do well and make money.
Yeah, more than ever, mate. Like, you know, with this, we're right in the middle of the corona virus as we're filming this, and you know, people are adapting, innovating, collaborating like never before. You know, at the last economic collapse, Uber and Airbnb were created. So who knows what's going to be created now?
It's going to be amazing.
And you've probably done a whole other set of adaptations and innovations in your business over the last few months, I'm tipping. And look, it's I don't know why it's got that kind of vibe around it in Australia for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe a lot of people have been burnt or sold too much. I don't know. But yeah, mate, I'll be willing to lock arms with you and fight.
I'm looking forward to catching up with you for a beer and a catch up, and like, it's amazing what you're doing and the vision that you've got and what you've done with your business. And I'd just love to see more Australian people doing that and reaching a worldwide audience, because Australia is the best country in the world, and we have some of the most amazing people, and there's some amazing companies that have come from Australia, but I just want to see more of it. We could be doing a lot more.
Maybe we fall in love with, moving to America and trying to crack the market over there. And, I don't know what it is. I don't know.
We'll get there.
Like you gotta have a red hot Aussie go. You've got to have a crack. So you're certainly doing that, bro. And what do you hold dearly? What makes a successful business person in your own view now that you've been around the Lord, and now you're you're certainly your own man, your own entrepreneur. What is the secret to your success? You know, what are your own hard and fast kind of rules that have become habits, you know, routines and rituals?
There's a lot to be said for being tough.
Right.
I remember I think it was like the third day I worked for Lord Sugar. One of his advisors came in, who's the top advisor for him. And he said to me, if you want to be successful, you want to make it here, he said, you've got to have a rhinoceros's tough skin. And I was like, I don't know what this bloke's talking about. And geez, he was right. You need to be tough. Like, you've got to be strong in business. And I think if I look back at why I've done, so out of all the winners, my company's the most profitable out of the Apprentice show winners. My company's the most profitable and seen as the most successful, quote unquote.
Wow.
And I think
out of 10 previous winners.
Yeah. And I'm only one of 5 that's left with him. He shafted 5 after the show they won, and then he gave their business a go and it didn't work. So it doesn't just stop after you win. And I think it comes back to consistency. I'm very consistent in my effort, you know, that I can day in, day out deliver. You know, yes, I go through points of motivation going up and down, but generally I'm very consistent with my effort and being incredibly tough. I'm able to go into hard negotiations. I'm able to stick at ideas and see them out till the end and make hard decisions. You know, we've just been through one of the worst situations I've ever seen in business, and we did okay. And that's because I made some really incredibly ruthless decisions at the start. And I don't take any pride in saying that, but I'm telling you how I got here. And I think that we're living in a world now where everyone's a bit too worried about the look of things and how what people might say. But the reality of being successful is there's a lot of tough things that happen behind the scenes that you need to be able to do.
And I guess the other part of that is, and I love the saying, dare to be disliked. You know, not being everyone's favourite is what a lot of people can't handle.
Exactly. The most unliked man is the man that's telling the truth. And my goal is, with all my employees that work for me, I've got over 50 staff here in the UK. Yep. And my goal for them is not to see me as a friend and is not to see me as a good bloke, but to, when they have left my tutelage or my management, be a much better person. That's whether that's producing more, be a better husband, wife, friend, family member, because I am giving them good tools, whether that's the way they present themselves, they speak on stage, the knowledge that they know, the way they can communicate with customers. I'm holding a 2-hour training session tonight with my employees on how to communicate with people. Now, that's not anything to do with our business. Yes, we'll employ them in our business, but my goal is for them to leave as better individuals and be more successful.
That's a credit to you, man. Unreal. Your company runs the live event. What's the name of that live event? ClimbCon, yeah. And you've had some amazing speakers at ClimbCon, and that's a really big event. And he works with you, Joseph, a good mate of mine. He's like, get over here. You need to be a part of this audience. And you've had some amazing speakers. Go through them, and also like you've met some amazing people as well. I dare say, you know, both entrepreneurs and probably sports people, etc. over there. Who do you rate the most? You know, and why? You know, who's in integrity and maybe who's full of shit? So,
wow, well, that's a great question. I've been very lucky through the profile of the show to be invited to speak on stages. And by the way, stages have given me just as much as The Apprentice. I think speaking on stage is my favorite thing I do as an entrepreneur, as a business person. And I encourage anyone who's in business, you need to learn how to present. You need to learn how to speak. If you can learn to communicate with people from stage or on a call like we're doing to mass audience, you can have so much business. You can really
a lot of opportunities, right?
Oh my God. You can have, I've got more customers from speaking on stage than anywhere else. Right. And, you know, I'm a marketing man. My goal is getting in leads, and still speaking on stage has produced and the connections I've had, like we spoke about Joseph or whatever.
Yeah.
For me, I was kind of scratching the first talk I ever did before I was well known. I think 5 people turned up, 3 didn't want to be there. It was horrendous. And I delivered the worst presentation ever. And then, that was like 8-9 years ago. And then I got bigger, up to a room of 30, 50, whatever. Now I put on a talk, I get a few thousand that come. And that people say now, I did my last event and it's huge. And people go, wow, I can't believe you've just started. I've been speaking on stage for 9 years. I'm the worst overnight success ever.
Look at the arrows in the back and look at the...
Yeah, exactly. So it takes a long time to get better. And I've never delivered the perfect talk, but that's because I'm constantly working on it. Yeah. So I basically was scratching away, speaking on stages, and then Grant Cardone, who's a very well-known entrepreneur, you probably heard of him, very famous. He wrote a book called The 10X Rule, which really catapulted him. He has a...
Hang on.
Oh, you probably got... There you go.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, exactly that book. So Grant Cardone, who wrote that book, very famous entrepreneur, really great speaker. He was coming over to the UK, but wasn't well known here. This is going back a few years. Yeah. Well known in the 1% community, the entrepreneurial community, but wanted to be known as well as in the US. Yeah. So he was on outreach for someone who's well known off a business TV show here to be his warm-up gig. I was Grant Cardone's warm-up gig. So before he would speak to an audience, I would go out and do the warm-up. So
there's a bit of
so basically I went and met him for a coffee and he said, listen, I'm going to do all these talks, but people don't know really who I am. So if you go out and do the thing, give me a bit of social cred, I'll do my 10X rule stuff. Anyway, and I knew who he was. I had a poster of him in my house in Australia. So, I'd been following this guy for years. I was trying to play it down. So I flew around. He brought his jet over. I was the second person to ever go in his jet. $53 million. He flew it over from Miami to here. We went down on a 9-day speaking tour, spoke to thousands, tens of thousands of people. And that really launched my speaking career because I got paid no fee. I did it for no fee. And all I did was, like, before you see a band, they have that band that comes out before to warm them up. I was literally just doing all my stuff, and I spoke to tens of thousands of people, and the benefit was huge. But the biggest thing I took for it was I was going around with Grant for 9 days in his jet, and for me, he was the most inspirational man I've ever met in my whole life.
Okay, so right there, you've touched on something. If there's someone that I watch more than other people online, it's Grant. He's grown on me. And on my bucket list is literally to meet him.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
And myself and, we don't model just the business side of things. We model, how he runs his life, his family, his partnership with Elena. And, he seems to be a real genuine guy. I'm so relieved to hear that he was full of integrity.
Behind the scenes, and I spent a lot of time with him, like 24 hours for 2 weeks, sharing hotel rooms. Like, me and him went old school. Like, we went proper, old school. He was the most inspirational human being I've ever met in my whole life. Out of every single, and I've met them all. I've met every speaker I've shared the stage with, the biggest names in the world, right down to people that are going to be the biggest names in the world, and seen the next top talents and the next Gary V's. But Grant he was amazing. He was I would leave, we would go on nights out, me and him, we would go out to Scotland and we'd be speaking in the middle of nowhere, and we'd go to the pub and he would have beers and be a proper dude. Yeah. And be a bit gangster, but he'd still be dropping bombs at the pub. Yeah. And it's just me. It's a one-man audience, and he's just delivering so much. He's just a different level of guy.
My partner Tracy, come in here, even though we're filming the podcast. This is Mark.
Hey Tracy, how are you? Lovely to meet you.
So right now, everyone watching this, yes, I am punching above my weight.
I was going to say.
No, just say it, mate. Over in England, you're batting above average. But like we love Grant, don't we? And it's so cool to hear this. And you're on loudspeaker here, mate, at the house, and that's really cool. I love that, and I didn't even prompt you to say that. That's great.
I didn't even know you were a follower. I'd never say anything I don't believe in. I got to spend a lot of time behind the scenes with him and his family and Elena, and very cool family, really cool model on what they're working on and their vision for success, how they model their family. I was the first person to work with Eleanor on a stage on interviewing her. And there was what was interesting for me, and we won't dwell on this too much, but we spoke at an event in London. It was a massive event. I think there was like one day, the first morning I opened it, there was like a few thousand in the audience, whatever. And I was sitting off to the side. So I did the opening, I did the first session, and I walked off and I sat behind Elena and I introduced Grant. He went on the stage, he started speaking. He was speaking. I was watching her, Elena, in front of me. She took 5 pages of just detailed notes on how he delivered the story, how his example, and then we went into the green room for lunch. She whacked out all the paper and said, right, in Malaysia, you delivered this story better because you did this. Here, you did that perfect. When you go back out, you need to get, and she was giving him so much detailed notes, and it was so inspirational for what a relationship should be, for how much she was into him. And then she went on to the stage and he took notes, and they were absolutely caning each other on the delivery and the value of the content to the audience. And I was like, far out. That was really inspirational for me to see. Amazing, mate. Amazing what they were working towards. Yeah.
You hear that, bud? Yeah. Good. So here's your pen.
Why you get me on
here's a bunch of paper here. How am I going? So, mate, that's mate, hugely inspirational. Look, we won't get into the people that have disappointed you either.
There's more of them than there are. There's very few that you walk away from, and especially the people you follow on Instagram. And this is where people should be really aware: is a lot of the stuff on Instagram isn't real. You know, at least with Grant, I've sat in his jet. Lord Sugar's jets, they're all real. These people have real planes and real families and real wives that are nice people. A lot of the people go for a photo shoot at a Lamborghini dealership or a jet dealership and tell people about success to sell their mentor box. There's very few people out there that... You haven't done that, have you? Oh, no!
I know exactly who you're talking about right now.
Oh, you've got to be careful who you follow. Beware of false proverbs. You've got to look for the real people. You've got to look for the people that are consistent with their message and who ultimately are successful themselves before giving the message. Because a lot of people are talking about success before they've ever had some.
Look, there's in this day and age, the Insta coach is there's more influencers. There's seemingly more coaches, more advice givers than actual clients.
Yeah, that's weird. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Super weird, isn't it? And mate, I'm look, I know time's getting on. You've got Lord Sugars, should I say, coming around soon. And what's for you in the future? Given the success that you've had, the amazing foundation that you've laid, the people around you, what's the vision for yourself and for
I'd love to, my main goal, and it's not a financial one, is to come back to Australia a bit, a lot more. I'd love to. We're looking at opening Climb Online in Sydney in January next year.
I heard Melbourne's better. I'm just saying.
Melbourne's great, but I've had too much long of having crap weather. I think if I'm going to do it,
coffee. You gotta.
So to come back to Australia would be just an absolute goal, and spend more of my time in Australia and
Yeah.
split it between America and the UK and,
Yeah.
and Australia. But be an Australian living in Australia, that's definitely a personal goal. And I took a lot from your session as well. Is, you know, I have made a lot of money. My businesses, I own 5 other companies in the UK.
Yeah.
And they're doing incredibly well. I'm in a very fortunate position where I sit on the board of many companies. They're profit-making companies, and I'm needed less and less in the day-to-day. And as a business owner, the best thing about being an entrepreneur and the best thing about being a business owner is you can live a life by design. I literally sat down and wrote down how I see myself in my businesses. And that doesn't mean going in there and answering the phones, dealing with customers. You can move yourself back to the board, out of the operation, and live a life by design, live on the beach, live anywhere else, and then come in, do your board meetings, make big decisions, do all of that stuff. And it does take time. You can't live that 4-hour work week in 1 year.
Yeah.
It takes time to build up the knowledge, the know-how in the team to enable you to do that. And I've got there now.
Yeah, mate. So inspirational, buddy. You know, whatever you need over here, I know you're connected as, so, you know, I can't wait to catch up face to face, man. And I really do wish you all the success. And I really do. You know, I going into this, I didn't know a lot about you. You know, our mate Joseph has talked about you for the last, 12 months, 2 years that he's been over there and worked under your tutelage, and speaks very, very highly of you, and I can see why. You know,
Thank you.
You're a man of integrity, which is rare. Who speaks the truth, dares to be disliked, all that sort of stuff, and I admire that. And I think whoever's watching, whoever's listening to this, follow this guy. How can people connect with you, man?
Right, well, I'm the second most famous.
Freaking followers. So look, just
I know. I can always do with a couple more because I annoy people on Twitter too much. But I'm the new Donald Trump. Basically, there's another famous Mark Wright, and I use that word famous very lightheartedly, but I'm the second most famous for my own name. And the ironic part is I'm in SEO and meant to be able to get anyone to the top of Google, and I'm second for my own name because this guy's
who's the other Mark Wright? I'm not aware of. Is he like a serial killer or something?
Well, no, he's on a really big reality TV show, and he's been going a lot longer than me. And we're born basically in the same year. He lives in the same suburb as me, and he has the same middle name, the same initial middle name. So it's just a disaster. So me and this guy in the same year with the same initial middle name, the whole thing's just a bit awkward.
Do we need to? I don't know. Do we need to organise some people to sort of? To take, let's take him out.
Exactly, it'd be really helpful for me. But if you search for Mark Wright, I have a blue tick on all social media, and I'm number 2 on all social media. Or if you go to my company, Climb Online, we would love to hear from you. From anyone that's looking for more leads or more business, I'd be happy to help. And anyone who'd love me to speak on their stage or podcast, I'm always happy to help future entrepreneurs.
Yeah, bro, unreal. Look, as I said, thanks heaps for your time, mate. Good luck with the board meeting today. And really, I'm really stoked that I've met you. So
and keep doing what you're doing. Your session to my staff was unbelievable, and even for me, it really spoke to me about what I should be doing with my life. Yeah,
that's great, man. That's great. Love it. Thanks heaps. Cheers,
mate.